water is sacred. Its rivers are revered as holy, bestowing blessings. But now they're polluted. Wells are running dry. Conflicts are breaking out. The battle for water is rocking this vast country.
We get adequate rain across most parts of the country. I think the challenge is of managing this water in a way that actually reaches the people who really need it.
India's water table is steadily falling year by year, driving whole villages deeper into poverty. In overcrowded cities, water is now so precious it spawned a thriving black market as clashes break out between those with water and those with thirst.
The fight for water is a fight that's going to be fought on in every street of every town, and it's already happening.
लेकिन अब जब हम लोग स्नान करते हैं तो वो थोड़ी थोड़ी अनुभूति होती है, और जब हम जाते हैं गंगा की गोद में तो लगता है जैसे कोई माँ जैसे अपने बच्चे को ले ले, तो वो अनुभूति हमें होती है। गंगा में बहुत सारा प्रवाह हमने देखा है, वो अब नहीं है, और गंगा जो है घाटों से लगी हुई थी, अब गंगा जो है घाटों को छोड़ करके दूर जा रही है।
Purnamba grew up here in Varanasi, one of India's most holy places. She renounced the world, devoting herself to Hinduism. But today she's speaking out, part of a fierce religious lobby calling on the government to protect the Ganges.
हम ये चाहते हैं कि गंगा की जो मूल धारा है, डिवोल्यूशन के लिए कहा जा रहा है, एक तो बांधों में नहीं रहेगी तो जो मूल धारा जो आएगी वो बिल्कुल साफ रहेगी, और दूसरे हम लोगों की मांगों में ये भी है कि जो फैक्ट्रियों का गंदा पानी गंगा जी में मिलता है उस पर भी रोक लगे।
This is now one of the most polluted rivers in the world. Hindus still flock to these waters to bathe, wash their clothes and cremate their dead. But rubbish rots along the banks, and every day millions of litres of sewage flow into the Ganges and its tributaries, most of it untreated. Even the flow of the river is being stunted. Large dams diverting water to India's cities have reduced the volume dramatically.
बड़ा दुख होता है ये स्थिति देख करके। लेकिन लगता है कि हमारे गुरुजी जो अभियान चला रहे हैं ये सफल होगा और फिर से गंगा की वही स्थिति हम लोग देख पाएंगे।
Purnamba stays optimistic, but in the past government promises to clean up the Ganges have made little difference to the decline of these holy waters.
The River Ganges is central to Indian life, and it has been for centuries. But nowadays its health is under threat in a way it never has been before in its whole history. And that's a powerful symbol of a much greater water crisis which is gripping the whole of this country.
The northwestern state of Rajasthan has long been semi-desert. For centuries, villagers here found their own solutions, digging wells and storing water. But in the last 5 to 10 years, wells and hand pumps have started to run dry. The water table is falling rapidly, in places by more than a metre every year. In this village, they've used the same well for generations, but it's almost exhausted, and the deeper they dig for water, the worse the quality.
The wells in some villages do still have some water, but the villagers here say that the level of water has fallen dramatically in recent years. We're having to lower this bucket about 20 metres just to try and find water. And the lady's saying that when the water finally comes, it's very bad quality. The villagers say it's so bad, in fact, they think it's making them ill.
The elderly now have a new sickness, a crippling bone disease. They suspect it's fluorosis, a growing problem in India, caused by water extracted from too deep in the ground, with too much natural fluoride. In other villages nearby, there's no water left at all. They depend entirely on tankers driving in water from outside. It's big business. They take it in turns to pay, spending a fifth of their income just on water. Water is so scarce now, they can't afford to irrigate the fields. So they've gone down to one harvest a year in the rainy season. The rest of the time, the fields lie barren. And all this is pushing them further into poverty. This water crisis is fueling migration from the villages to slums in the big cities. It's one of the main reasons people leave. But what they find in their new homes is all too familiar. A government tanker outside a slum in the capital, Delhi. Its arrival sparks a desperate scramble for water in blistering heat. It's every man for himself and every woman. This is their only source of clean water. No one knows for sure when the next one will come, so the whole tanker empties in less than 10 minutes, and in the chaos, far too much is simply wasted.
So for the average family living in a slum like this in Delhi, what are the biggest problems they face in terms of water?
They don't have any planned sources of water.
Jyoti Sharma runs a small charity called Force. She knows too well how scarce water is and how poorly managed. Water is piped under the slum to more affluent districts. Where they can, the poor dig down to those pipes and tap into them illegally.
They have created this leak so they can take water. And as you can see, even children know how to create that leak. And now this is the source of contamination. This is treated wastewater with no pathogens, nothing. But when you open up the pipeline like this, all this contaminated water gets into the pipeline. And it's bad for them, but it's bad for everybody down the
line. Water is so precious it spawned a vicious black market, illegal of course, and controlled by armed men. This is supposed to be a free public facility, a borewell put in by the government to provide poor quality water for toilets. But local racketeers have taken control. They sell this as drinking water.
This is actually I would say it's a very well managed system,
right,
but commercially operated.
And illegal.
And completely illegal. Each pipeline leads either to one house or to a cluster of houses,
right,
all of which have agreed on a common time for which they'll take water. The person who manages this, he'll switch this on for 15 minutes, so that household will get water for 15 minutes, and then he switches it off and switches somebody else's water on. So depending on how much money you pay the time for which you get water in the day, that's how it's fixed.
In a way, this is a system that works, but it must also give the people in charge a lot of power over everybody else. If they fall out with you, they can switch off your water.
Absolutely. We work with the women in this area and we face this problem. If we ask the women to take a decision contrary to the decision that this man has taken, he threatens them that I will shut off your water supply.
And what about the profit issue? We've said that this is illegal.
Yeah.
This is water that is supplied free, and yet the people here are having to pay for it to get access for it.
Not only do they make enough money to pay salary of 4,000 rupees to one person, in addition to that they have a bank account in which they keep the profits. And this is all shared between that set of 2 or 3 people.
Sanju left her village in Rajasthan because of the lack of water. Here in the Delhi slum, she buys it through the same black market system. They get water every 3rd day, she says, piped to their home for about half an hour.
यहाँ पानी की दिक्कत यही है कि थोड़ा सा मतलब हमें कभी बता रही हूँ वही बाई चांस अचानक होती हैं कभी कभी अब दिल्ली है इतनी जनता है पानी थोड़ा बहुत प्रॉब्लम हो ही जाती है हाँ वैसे तो
The children sometimes have stomach problems, she told me. Then they boil the water for a while. She added, what else can you expect in a place like this?
About half of Delhi's rapidly expanding population is classed as poor, and as they struggle to get enough water to meet their basic daily needs, the rich, by contrast, have plenty of it. On average, they use 10 times as much water per person per day. And that situation where the haves and have-nots are living in close proximity in the same city is causing growing social tension.
Almost everyone here speaks of conflict over water. Even Jyoti Sharma, who works in the slums, is anxious about how much she has compared to others.
We've got these storage tanks on the rooftop.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, all
Yeah.
water.
And there are another 4 on the ground floor.
And are they usually full?
Yeah, they are, yes. Till a few years back, we did not get enough water in my locality. So the same women who used to go together to drop their children to school in the morning would be fighting in the afternoon for that, maybe 200 extra liters of water. So when I mean conflict, I mean actual street fights for water. That's happening all the time. The fight for water is a fight that's going to be fought in every street of every town. And it's already happening. It's happening, when a tanker comes here and there are 100 people clambering on top of the tanker. That's a fight that's happening in front of you. When water comes in the morning and, somebody is fighting with a neighbor because his overflowing tank does not allow water to flow down the pipeline onto the next water tank. That's a fight that's happening.
The government is well aware that fights about water are breaking out and look set to worsen.
Sharp local conflicts are already on the ground, and I think they are a matter of real concern because they concern the well-being of the people. A state which is committed to inclusive growth, I think, needs to look at water as well as land. Land we are trying to do through a new legislation we are bringing on land acquisition. I think something very urgent and similar needs to be done on water.
Some parts of India do have water. Uttarakhand is one of India's northernmost states, sharing a mountain border with China. It's rich in natural beauty and its waters feed the river Ganges. But these resources are now being used, some say stolen, by others.
One of the government solutions to this whole growing water crisis is to build a series of massive dams, and this one here at Tehri in the foothills of the Himalayas is one of the biggest to date. It's now supplying water and electricity for people across the whole of the north of India, but right from its conception it's proved highly controversial. And one of the reasons is that what now looks like a reservoir there behind me, well, until 5 or 6 years ago, that was a whole town.
When Tehri town disappeared beneath the water, some unlikely alliances were formed. from furious environmentalists to religious groups opposed to this diverting of water which would otherwise flow into the Ganges. And campaigners say villagers here are being forced to pay the price for other people's development. Tens of thousands of people were displaced. Those who were forced from their homes and villages were given compensation, and they do have new places to live, but many of them are angry. Gudambari was one of the first to be moved almost 20 years ago. She still hasn't adjusted. The soil is arid and sandy. She doesn't have water, she says, to irrigate the fields. The crops barely survive. Some of these villagers still struggle to work the dry land, but many have already given up, sold their fields to developers and left for the cities. Back in the mountains, overlooking the new Teddy Dam reservoir, these families lost their homes by the river. They depend on a standpipe now. When I arrived, the water was flowing, but soon stopped. Sometimes, they say, there's none for 3 or 4 days, and when it comes, it's dirty. Sneha Agarwal says she was offered rehousing in this tin shack in New Teddy as a short-term measure. That was 13 years ago, and she's still here. In her old home, they lived near the river and had plenty of clean water.
बहुत ज्यादा पानी तो बहुत गंदा है। मेरा बेटा तो हर तीसरे दिन हॉस्पिटल में एडमिट होता है। 3 महीने बीतते हैं फिर क्योंकि गैस बनने लगती है। उसके 3 साल के बेटे की गैस बन रही है। ये इससे ज्यादा और क्या कहा जाए। पाइप पड़ा है ना, इसी के अंदर गैस है।
The government made plans for many more dams, but some of that work is now on hold in the face of widespread opposition. And some officials say they're rethinking the whole approach.
We should first take up the renovation and the repair of projects which are already on the ground. Secondly, we should take up the completion of projects which are incomplete. And thirdly, and most importantly, we must radically transform the way the water in these command areas of these projects is managed. If we can do these first, I think we'd be better served doing the first part rather than going in for more and more construction.
Back in rural Rajasthan, part of India's dry belt, a very different solution is being explored. Rajendra Singh is known as the waterman of Rajasthan. He spent almost 30 years reviving community-based, small-scale projects, which he sees as the answer to India's water problems. His techniques sound simple. First, stop overgrazing and let plants grow back. Next, build check dams.
Yes, this is
not a new idea.
This is not a new idea. This is an old idea.
When the rain comes, these slow down the flow, create pools, and encourage the water to seep into the earth and replenish ground stocks. Here, despite semi-desert conditions, he's worked with the villagers for decades, building thousands of small dams which take advantage of local terrain. India has plenty of rainfall, he argues. It's just that people have forgotten how to harvest it. And this is what happens if you take those same basic principles and apply them on a much bigger scale. 20 years ago, there was very little water here, but they built a whole series of those stone barriers, and you can see the results for yourself. It's transformed the landscape, and it's transformed the lives of local people.
पहाड़ का जो पानी आता है वो सारा इसमें इकट्ठा हो जाता है और इकट्ठा होने के बाद जब ये जमीन में चला जाता है तो एक कुआं है.
Roop Narayan is a water success story. He left his land to work in the city because of the lack of water. Now he and his sons are back.
And the water going down. You see the water going down here.
He followed Rajendra's advice, he says, and built check dams. A piece of arid wasteland turned into a thriving orchard with water to spare.
Why is all this issue about water coming to a head at the moment?
Because one hand, lot of water have, and other hand, no water. So this is the mismanagement of the water creates the difference. All urban people, they are taking lot of water for drinking. But in the rural area, no water for drinking. The walking 8 hours, 6 hours, 2 hours, hours and hours walking for the water. So that real crisis for water continue in my country.
Rajendra Singh wants the government's policy to focus on India's grassroots. Projects like water harvesting must be localised, he says, carried out by the community for their benefit. That way, he says, they're motivated to repair and protect the structures. Back on the banks of the Ganges, pilgrims gather. They travel here from across the country to cleanse themselves in its waters and make offerings. Many seem unaware that the future of their holy river is threatened. For India, this is a defining moment. It's being torn apart by tensions over water as never before, between rich and poor, cities and villages, those who have water and those who are struggling to live without enough.
अगर हम लोगों की बात सरकार नहीं मानेगी तो यही है कि गंगा धीरे धीरे लुप्त होती जाएगी, लेकिन हम लोग आशावादी हैं और ये सोचते हैं कि जरूर सरकार इस बात को मानेगी.
The ancient fire ritual by the Ganges brings a moment of peace and spiritual reflection. But India's harmony is already shattered. Protests and clashes are breaking out about access to clean water. Without radical change, there could be far greater battles to come.